Here's a quick Logic Pro orientation video just to kind of show you your way around the Logic environment a little bit. When you first come into the Synthesis Lab, you'll come in, you'll sign into the computer with your MSU credentials, and you can come down and click on Logic Pro. This is my laptop, by the way, but Logic Pro looks the same in the Synthesis Lab. You're just not going to see everything else that's up here. So the little platinum silver album here, we click on that, and Logic Pro, for me, opens up in kind of a blank state here. I see Logic Pro at the top. In the Synthesis Lab, odds are yours is going to open up with a choice of templates. Either way, it works to click on Empty Project right there. Or for me, I just kind of like to go File, New, and that gets me to my empty project. Once we're at this screen, you've got options for what types of tracks you want to create and how many. Software instruments are things like the built-in synthesizers in Logic, and there's a lot of those. Down here, it lets me choose from any number of synthesizers. It defaults to the EXS-24, but you could just as easily use Sculpture or Ultrabeat or whatever. We're not going to be doing very much of that, though. Almost everything we do is going to be audio, and that's your standard sounds coming from somewhere else outside of the computer. You know, it's going to be a microphone, it's going to be a guitar, it's going to be a real audio track, not a software instrument. So I'm going to put 2 tracks in here, and for right now I only have one USB microphone plugged into my laptop. I don't even have an audio interface plugged in, so I don't think it's even going to give me more than one input. If I had something with at least 2 inputs, then this little box here that says ascending, which is checked in the input column, that would make the creation of 2 tracks automatically route input number 1 to track number 1 and input number 2 to track number 2, which is what will happen in the Synthesis Lab. So let's just go ahead and create 2 here. I'm going to leave everything else alone. And here's what we end up seeing when we first open everything up. Now, one of the very first things I like to do is I will come up here and click this icon. This is the mixer icon, and that means that I can see my Audio 1 and Audio 2 channels. And here for input, I only have one option, which is my blue snowball microphone. And that's fine. Now, one of the most important things I want to point out is that if you come up to your Logic Pro X menu and you look at Preferences, you're going to see an option down here called Advanced Tools. And this is one of the first things I think you're going to want to change so that it defaults to this in the future. Click on Advanced Tools and make sure that Show Advanced Tools is checked. There's going to be some things that we want access to that just won't show up unless you enable them. And so some of this stuff we're not really going to get into. We just really want this one right here to be checked. So if that is checked, the next thing that you can do is come over to View, and you will see Customize Control Bar and Display. Some of the things that we want to access, again, are down here. Software monitoring, or low latency mode. We want these guys checked. Auto punch. We want these guys checked because these are tools that we want to be able to access from the top toolbar area, and they just aren't going to show up unless we check them off here. So I'm going to say OK. And now when I come up here, let me show you where these guys show up at. This little range of boxes will show a certain number, and then if it doesn't go beyond, if your screen resolution doesn't allow it to go beyond that, you can click on this little arrow and you'll see some more options. So now you see the things that we just added. I have auto punch, which wasn't going to show up before. I have low latency mode. I have software monitoring. Auto punch is something that's going to show up for one of our exercises coming up in a couple of weeks. Low latency mode as well is something that's going to show up. That's when we're recording and monitoring to something that's already been recorded. Without low latency mode, a lot of times you will have huge timing issues, and what you record will not sync up or even be able to line up when you're monitoring with what you've already laid down track-wise. So anyway, here's your click as well. If I want to turn my metronome on and off, then I can do that right there. A lot of other things that you can kind of figure out for yourself. BPM, if you know for a fact that you're going to be recording a song that's at 120, then you want to have that thing set at 120 so that you can use the metronome and other types of tools that will let you line things up and snap them to the grid. Same thing with the key. If you know it's going to be in a certain key or time signature, you can set up all that stuff as well. If I go back to preferences and audio, then I have my input and output device. Now in the Synthesis Lab, this thing is always going to stay the same. It's always going to be on the M-Audio mobile pre, but if we're using other computers in different places, we could set up any audio interface to be our input and output device. Here I have the Audient ID22, which is what's set up in the Red Studio, which is my office. I might also plug in the Behringer X32. I could plug in the Apogee Ensemble, and as long as I make sure to select the proper device, then I can use any of those devices with Logic as my audio interface.